Riley Curry stood alone on the backyard basketball court, the orange basketball trembling in her small 12-year-old hands. Tears silently streamed down her cheeks, and the afternoon sun of March 2025 painted long shadows across her anguished face. "To understand how we got here," she whispered to herself, repeating a phrase she had heard her father say 1,000 times. "We need to go back a few hours, when everything fell apart. You can see that some pains are too big for such small bodies, but perfectly suited for hearts determined to grow." 6 hours earlier, at the Sacred Heart School's gymnasium in Atherton, California, Riley had just lived through the worst day of her young life. The tryouts for the 7th-grade girls' basketball team had ended, and the words still echoed in her head like relentless hammers. "You're only trying because you're Steph Curry's daughter," Gabriel Harris had whispered loud enough for others to hear. The 13-year-old boy, son of a diplomat, always found ways to diminish others. "Everyone knows you'll never be truly good." The coach, Isaiah Davis, a tall 40-year-old man who knew the weight of carrying famous surnames in sports, tried to intervene. "Gabriel, focus on your own game." But the damage was done. Riley felt every word like a stab, because part of her had always feared they were true. How is it possible that a 12-year-old child already carries the weight of expectations that took decades to form? Riley had trained for months for that moment. She woke up at 6 in the morning every day before school to practice shots in the family's backyard in Atherton, California. Even when they were traveling, she found courts, gymnasiums, any place to perfect her fundamentals. She knew she was good. Not extraordinary like her father, but good enough to earn her spot on the team by her own merit. At least, that's what she hoped. "Riley Curry," Coach Davis had called at the end of practice, "could you speak with me for a moment?" She approached, her heart racing, sweaty hands clutching the ball against her chest. "You have talent, young lady," he said gently, but Riley already recognized that tone. It was the tone adults used when they were about to shatter children's dreams. "But this year the team is very competitive. Maybe next year—" The following words became a blur. Riley nodded politely, thanked him, and left the gymnasium with firm steps. Only when she reached the car, where Isha was, waiting, did she allow the first tear to escape. "How did it go, baby?" Isha asked, looking through the rearview mirror. "It went well, Mom," Riley lied, forcing a smile. "Can we go home?" What's most impressive is how children learn so early to protect their parents from their own pain. The car ride home was silent. Riley pretended to sleep, but was actually reliving every moment of the tryouts, every criticism, every look of pity. The short 10-minute journey between the school and their home in Atherton seemed endless. When they arrived home that afternoon, Steph was still at the Warriors' training complex. It was regular season, March 2025, and at 37 years old, he continued playing at the highest level, chasing what could be his last championship. Riley locked herself in her room for 2 hours. Isha respected the space, but was worried. She knew her daughter. Riley was resilient, determined, but also sensitive. Very much like Steph at her age. When Steph finally arrived home at 7 in the evening, he found the house strangely quiet. "Where is everyone?" he asked, taking off his shoes at the entrance. "Ryan and Cannon are at Grandma's house," Isha replied, referring to the couple's other children. "And Riley?" "Well, she's in the backyard. Steph, we need to talk." Isn't it incredible how parents always know when something is wrong, even before words are spoken? Isha told him about the tryouts, about Riley's silence during the ride, about the Hours locked in her room. Steph listened with growing concern, recognizing signs he himself had exhibited in his youth. "Did she say anything?" Steph asked. "Not directly, but I heard her crying in her room. And then," Isha hesitated, "I saw her burning something in the backyard. They looked like photos." Steph ran to the window. Riley was sitting on the court, small flames still crackling in a metal can beside her. Charred paper remains flew with the evening breeze. "What was she burning?" Steph asked, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. "Photos of her playing basketball, participation trophies, a letter she was writing to you about wanting to be a professional player." Isha wiped away a tear. "Steph, she's giving up." Steph slowly walked out to the backyard, each step heavy with the weight of paternal responsibility. Riley didn't look up when he approached, even knowing he was there. "Hi, baby girl," he said softly, sitting beside her on the court. The concrete was still warm from the day's sun. "Hi, Dad," Riley replied, her voice small and distant. They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the last embers die in the can. The smell of burned paper mixed with the jasmine fragrance from Isha's garden. "Want to tell me what happened?" Steph finally asked. Riley shrugged. "I didn't make the team." "And that made you want to burn your photos?" Another pause. Then, like a dam breaking, everything came out at once. "They're right, Dad. I only tried because I'm your daughter. I'll never be good enough on my own. Everyone will always think that everything I achieve is because you're my father." Riley finally looked at him, her eyes red and swollen. "Some battles are too big to fight." Steph felt his heart break. Those words were like echoes from his own youth, when Duke and North Carolina rejected him for being too small. When coaches said he would never be an NBA player. Have you ever wondered how a child can carry such ancient fears in such a young heart? "Riley," Steph began, but she interrupted him. "I want to quit basketball, Dad. Forever. I'll find something that's just mine, not yours." She stood up and began walking toward the house, leaving Steph alone on the court with the remains of burned dreams and the weight of words he recognized all too well. In that moment, Steph Curry, three-time NBA champion, two-time MVP, the greatest shooter in history, felt like the most inadequate man in the world. How does a father explain to his daughter that his own success has become her greatest obstacle? Later that night, Steph lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Isha slept beside him, but he knew she was worried too. The clock read 2:34 in the morning. He thought about his own journey. In 2006, at 18 years old, when he was rejected by the major universities, he remembered crying in the backyard of his parents' house in Charlotte, feeling like the world had collapsed. He remembered his father, Del Curry, sitting beside him and saying, "Son, the real game is played off the courts." At the time, Steph hadn't fully understood. Now, looking at Riley's situation, the words made more sense than ever. He picked up his phone and sent a message to the Warriors coach. "I won't train tomorrow. Urgent family matter." Then, he sent another message, this time to someone he hadn't spoken to in years, his former coach at Davidson College, Connor Smith. "Coach, I need a favor. Can I bring my daughter to see Davidson tomorrow? I need to show her where it all began." The response came 15 minutes later. "Of course, Steph. The gymnasium will be open." Steph smiled for the first time in hours. He had a plan. Naturally, this leads us to understand that sometimes parents need to revisit their own past to help their children build the future. The next morning, Steph woke Riley at 7 o'clock. "Pack your things, baby girl. We're taking a trip." Where to? Riley asked, still sleepy, and clearly not interested. To a place that changed my life, to Davidson College in North Carolina. Riley frowned. That little school where you played before the NBA? Steph laughed, despite the tension. That same little school that taught me everything about not giving up. I don't want to go, Dad. I don't want to talk about basketball. We're not going to talk about basketball, Steph deliberately lied. We're going to talk about dreams, about fear, about how your father almost gave up everything at 19 years old. Riley stopped getting dressed and looked at him. You almost gave up? Oh, baby girl, Steph said, sitting on her bed. I have some stories to tell you. It's impossible not to feel the natural curiosity of a child when she discovers that her heroes were also human. 2 hours later, they were in the car, driving along Highway 280 toward Davidson College. Riley was quiet, looking out the window at the California hills, but Steph could see she was processing. Since she was little, she had always been thoughtful, analytical. Dad, she finally said, why didn't you ever tell me you almost gave up? Steph chose his words carefully. Because when you're a child, you need to believe your parents are superheroes. Now that you're growing up, well, I think it's time you meet the man behind the superhero. Riley nodded, and for the first time in 24 hours, Steph saw a small interest in her eyes. The plane cut through the clouds toward North Carolina, carrying a father determined to save his daughter's dreams, even if it meant exposing his own vulnerabilities. Something that touches deeply is when we realize that healing our children's hearts sometimes requires opening wounds we thought were healed. The Davidson College campus stretched before them like a postcard of university dreams. It was late afternoon. They had flown to Charlotte and driven to Davidson. North Carolina was at its spring peak, magnolias blooming, students walking between red brick buildings, the air filled with the smell of freshly cut grass and infinite possibilities. Riley got out of the rental car and looked around, clearly unimpressed. It's smaller than I imagined, she said, adjusting her backpack on her shoulders. Steph smiled, remembering his own first impression in August 2006, when he arrived as a skinny 18-year-old freshman that nobody wanted. Size isn't everything, baby girl. Sometimes the smaller places hold the biggest lessons. They walked across campus toward the Belk Arena, but Steph made sure to take the longer route, passing by the dormitories where he had lived. There, he pointed to a modest building, was my room in sophomore year. Third-floor window, second from the left. Riley followed his gaze, trying to imagine her father as a college student. It was difficult. To her, Steph had always been a superstar, a larger-than-life figure. How is it possible that our heroes had such human moments, so similar to our own? Dad, Riley said as they walked, why did you come to Davidson anyway? I mean, it was 2006. You were already known in high school basketball. Steph stopped walking for a moment, memories hitting him like waves. Because nobody else wanted me, Riley. Duke rejected me. North Carolina rejected me. Virginia Tech, where Grandpa had played, rejected me. But you were good. I thought I was, but coaches saw a 5'9", 185-pound kid trying to play college basketball. They saw limitations where I saw potential. Steph resumed walking, hands in his pockets. Davidson was the only Division I school that believed in me. Riley processed this in silence. She had always known her father had been underestimated, but had never understood the depth of rejection he faced. How did you feel? She finally asked. Devastated. Furious. And for a few months. Steph hesitated, knowing he was about to share something he had never told even Isha. For a few months, I wanted to quit basketball completely. You can see that some truths only emerge when we're desperate enough to heal them. They arrived at the Belk Arena, a modest gymnasium that held about 5,000 people. From the outside, it seemed almost insignificant compared to the NBA stadiums where Steph played now, but his eyes sparkled when he saw it. "This place," he said reverently, "changed my life." Connor Smith, now 53 years old with graying hair, was waiting for them at the entrance. He had been an assistant coach during Steph's years at Davidson and was promoted to head coach in 2020. "Steph Curry," Connor said with a wide smile, hugging the former player. "I still can't believe that skinny kid became, well, you." "Coach Smith," Steph replied, visibly emotional. "Thank you for opening the gymnasium for us." Connor turned to Riley. "And you must be the famous Riley. I heard you have the same shot as your father." Riley blushed and looked at her feet. "Actually, I kind of gave up basketball." Connor raised his eyebrows and looked at Steph, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Well," Connor said diplomatically, "how about you come in? I have some stories about your father that might interest you." The interior of the gymnasium was silent and dark, only a few emergency lights dimly illuminating the empty bleachers. Steph asked Connor to turn on the main lights, and when he did, the gymnasium came to life. Riley looked around, noticing the banners hanging from the ceiling. One caught her attention. "Elite 8, 2008. Steph Curry." "Elite 8?" she asked. "We made it to the quarterfinals of March Madness," Steph explained. "It was one of the best moments of my life." Connor laughed. "Steph is being modest. He practically carried this team on his back. Scored 40 points against Gonzaga, 33 against Georgetown, 25 against Wisconsin." "But I wasn't talking about the games," Steph said softly, looking at the bleachers. "I was talking about discovering who I really was." Naturally, this leads us to question: how many times do we need to lose ourselves before we find ourselves? Steph walked to the center of the court, Riley following hesitantly. Connor discreetly stepped away, understanding this was a father-daughter moment. "Sit here with me," Steph said, sitting on the court floor. Riley joined him, crossing her legs. "Riley, I want to tell you about the worst day of my college life. It was in December 2006, my first year here." Riley turned to face him, finally interested. "We had just lost a home game to Charlotte by 15 points. I had scored only 8 points, missing everything I shot. After the game, I read online comments saying I was a fraud, that Davidson had wasted a scholarship on me." Steph paused, breathing deeply. "That night, I called Grandpa Dell, crying. I said I wanted to transfer, maybe even quit basketball." "What did he say?" Riley asked, her voice small. "He said something I never forgot. 'Son, the real game is played off the courts, and the game you're playing now isn't basketball, it's courage.' What's most impressive is how the right words at the right time can rewrite entire destinies." Steph stood up and walked to the three-point line. "Do you know what I did after that conversation?" Riley shook her head. "I came to this gymnasium. It was 2 in the morning, but I had a key because I was a player. Stayed here alone until dawn, shooting." He picked up a ball that Connor had left on the sideline and dribbled it a few times. The sound echoed in the empty gymnasium like a beating heart. "But I wasn't just practicing shots, Riley. I was practicing not giving up. With every ball that went in, I said, I deserve to be here. With every ball I missed, I said, I will get better. Steph shot. The ball flew in a perfect arc and went through the net with a soft swish. And did it work? Riley asked. Well, 3 years later I was being drafted 7th overall to the NBA, Steph smiled. But more importantly, I learned that some battles are worth fighting, especially when everyone says you're going to lose. Have you ever wondered how a single night can determine decades of future? Riley was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, unexpectedly, she asked, Dad, are you afraid of anything now? The question caught Steph off guard. He stopped dribbling the ball and looked at his daughter. Every day, he admitted. I'm afraid of getting hurt and not being able to play anymore. I'm afraid of you kids growing up too fast. I'm afraid that my fame makes your life more difficult. Is that why you almost never talk about when you were young? Maybe. I wanted you to see me as someone strong, someone who always knew what he was doing. Riley stood up and walked to her father. But Dad, I like you better now. Knowing that you were also afraid, it makes me feel less alone. Steph felt his eyes fill with tears. What? Since forever, I felt like I needed to be perfect because I'm your daughter. But if you were afraid and still made it, maybe I can too. It's impossible not to feel the power of shared vulnerability, creating bridges where once there were chasms. Connor, who had been watching from the sideline, approached with more balls. Riley, he said, want to hear about the first time I saw your father cry? Riley looked surprised. My dad cried? Oh, more than once. But this specific time was after a game against Duke. Yes, the same Duke that had rejected him. We won on a comeback. Steph scored 30 points. And then, in the locker room, he cried with relief. Steph laughed, remembering. I cried because I finally felt like I had proven something to myself. And do you know what he said that day? Connor continued. He said, Coach, I want every kid who was rejected to see this game and know it's possible. Riley looked at her father with new eyes. You always wanted to inspire people like you. Like me. Riley, I want to inspire people like you. People who feel like the odds are against them, who carry heavy surnames, who are afraid they're not good enough. Something that touches deeply is realizing that our greatest fears are often the same fears as our heroes. Can I try some shots? Riley asked suddenly, surprising both Steph and Connor. Of course, baby girl. Riley picked up a ball and walked to the free throw line. Her first shot was short, hitting the rim. Relax your shoulders, Steph said softly. You're not competing with anyone here. The second shot went in clean. Dad, Riley said, still looking at the basket, if I decide to keep playing, will you teach me how not to give up? Steph walked to her and, for the first time in years, performed the ritual his own father Dell had done with him. He touched her forehead with his. Baby girl, I'm not going to teach you how not to give up. You already know that. I'm going to teach you that it's okay to be afraid, as long as you don't let fear make the decisions for you. Riley took a deep breath. Some battles are too big to fight, but maybe some battles are exactly the right size to make us grow. Steph smiled, recognizing his own phrase being transformed by his daughter's wisdom. Exactly, Riley. Exactly. They spent the next hour in the gymnasium. Connor told more stories about Steph, including the time he practiced with a 102-degree fever because he didn't want to disappoint the team. Steph showed Riley some of the shots he had invented on that court. But the most important moment happened when Riley missed 5 consecutive shots, and, instead of getting frustrated, she laughed. "Grandpa Dell was right," she said. "The real game is played off the courts. And the game I'm playing now isn't basketball. It's learning to forgive myself." Steph stopped breathing for a moment. His 12-year-old daughter had just articulated something that took him decades to understand. "Riley," he said, his voice choked with emotion, "you just said something more profound than any motivational speech I've ever heard. Naturally, this leads us to understand that sometimes students become teachers at the exact moment we most need the lesson." When they left the gymnasium, it was almost 6 in the evening. The sun was setting, painting the campus golden. "Dad," Riley said as they walked back to the car, "can I ask you a question? Anyone? If you could go back in time and change anything about your journey, would you?" Steph stopped walking and thought carefully. "No, baby girl. Because every rejection, every tear, every sleepless night brought me to you, to your mother, to the life we have. And especially," he smiled, "it prepared me for this moment with you." Riley nodded, and for the first time in 2 days, Steph saw real determination in her eyes. "Dad, I want to go home and train. Not to prove anything to Gabriel Harris or to any coach, but to prove to myself that I can choose not to give up. And if it gets difficult, then it will be difficult, but at least it will be my choice. It's impossible not to feel the exact moment when a child decides to become the owner of her own destiny." On the flight back to California the next day, Riley slept leaning on her father's shoulder. Steph looked out the window, reflecting on the previous day. He had left home that morning wanting to save his daughter's dreams. Now he realized that the one who had been saved was himself. Saved from the idea that he needed to be perfect to be a good father. When Riley woke up 20 minutes before landing, she said something Steph would never forget. "Dad, thank you for showing me that you're also human. It makes me love you even more." And in that moment, flying at 30,000 feet over the American continent, Steph Curry knew he had experienced one of the most important moments of his life. But the real test was just beginning. Because now Riley would have to face her own battles, and Steph would have to learn to cheer from the stands while she discovered her own strength. Some journeys cannot be made for us, only alongside those we love. A week had passed since the trip to Davidson, and Riley Curry stood in front of the bathroom mirror at home at 6 in the morning, taking deep breaths. It was Monday, March 24th, 2025, and she had made a decision that kept her awake the previous night. She would return to tryouts. Coach Isaiah Davis had been clear. There would be a second round of tests on Thursday for the last 2 spots on the 7th grade girls' team. Apparently, 2 girls had gotten injured during practice, opening new opportunities. You can see that sometimes the universe gives us second chances exactly when we're ready to deserve them. Riley went down to the kitchen, where she found Steph drinking coffee, already dressed in his Warriors' practice uniform. It was a game day against the Portland Trail Blazers, and he would normally be focused only on basketball. "Good morning, baby girl," he said, noticing something different in his daughter's posture. "How did you sleep?" "Badly," Riley admitted, serving herself cereal. "Dad, I've decided. I'm going to try out again." Steph almost choked on his coffee. "Really? You said some battles are worth fighting. Well, this is my battle." Steph smiled, pride flooding his chest. "When are the tests?" "Thursday at 3 in the afternoon." Steph did a quick mental calculation. The Warriors played against the Denver Nuggets on Thursday at 8 at night, at home. That meant he would be at the training complex during Riley's tryouts. "I'll be there," he said without hesitation. "Dad, you have a game." "Riley, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you." Steph stood up and approached her. "Basketball is my profession, but being your father is my vocation. And vocations always come first. How is it possible that a simple declaration can rewrite all the priorities of a life?" That morning at school, Riley felt like she was walking with a different aura. She hadn't told anyone about her decision, but Andrea Hall, her best friend since 5th grade, noticed immediately. You're different," Andrea said as they got books from their lockers. "Like more firm or something?" "I'm going to try out again," Riley said quietly. Andrea's eyes widened. "Seriously? But what about what Gabriel said?" "What Gabriel said doesn't define who I am," Riley replied, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "And if I'm going to fail, at least it will be while trying, not running away." But as if the universe were testing her new resolve, Gabriel Harris appeared in the hallway at that exact moment, accompanied by 2 friends. "Look at that," Gabriel said loud enough for other students to hear. "The basketball princess is back. I bet Daddy bought a whole team for her." Riley felt the blood rush to her face, but instead of lowering her head as she did before, she turned to face him. "Gabriel," she said calmly, "I'm going to try out on Thursday, and when I make the team, it will be because I deserved it, not because of my last name." The hallway fell silent. Some students stopped to watch, sensing that something important was happening. Gabriel laughed nervously, not expecting Riley to respond. "Yeah, right. Let's see how long you last this time before you quit crying." "The only person crying will be you," Andrea interrupted, positioning herself beside her friend. "When Riley shows that true talent has nothing to do with last names." Isn't it incredible how courage can be contagious, spreading like fire among those who care about each other? At lunchtime, Riley was sitting alone in the library, trying to focus on homework, but her mind kept returning to Thursday. She had promised herself she would train every day until then, but doubts still gnawed at her confidence. Her phone vibrated with a message from Steph. "How was the morning, champ?" Riley typed back, "Gabriel being Gabriel, but I spoke up for myself this time." The response came almost immediately. "Proud of you. P.S. Cancelled afternoon practice. Want to work on your shot?" Riley looked at the message, incredulous. Steph never canceled practice, especially before important games. "Dad, you can't cancel practice because of me." Already canceled. Coach Kerr understood. Some things are more important than basketball. Tears welled up in Riley's eyes, right there in the quiet library. In her 12 years of life, she had never felt so prioritized, so seen, so loved. What's most impressive is how simple gestures can carry enough emotional weight to heal wounds we didn't even know existed. At 3 in the afternoon, Riley found Steph in the backyard, not just with basketballs, but with complete training equipment she had never seen before. "What is all this?" she asked, impressed. "Agility cones, resistance bands, position markers," Steph explained. "If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right." "Dad, this must have cost—" "Riley, stop!" Steph knelt in front of her, looking directly into her eyes. "Do you think I care about money right now? You made the most courageous decision of your life. My job is to give you all the tools to succeed." They trained for 2 hours. Steph didn't go easy. He made her run agility drills, practice shots from various positions, work on defense. But he also stopped frequently to teach, to adjust, to encourage. "Remember," he said while she practiced dribbling, "you're not competing against the other girls. You're competing against the version of yourself that wanted to give up last week." "What if I don't make it?" Riley asked during a water break. "Then you'll know you gave everything you had. And that, baby girl, is a victory no one can take away from you." Have you ever wondered why the simplest lessons are also the hardest to accept? On Tuesday night, Riley was in her room doing homework when she heard loud voices coming from downstairs. Curious, she went down quietly and heard Steph talking on the phone with someone from the Warriors organization. "I understand it's an important game, but I won't be there Thursday afternoon. It's non-negotiable." "No, it's not a medical emergency. It's something more important." "Yes, I know what I'm doing." Riley hid on the stairs, listening. "Steve, listen," Steph continued, clearly talking to Coach Steve Kerr. "My daughter is facing the most important moment of her young life so far. If I'm not there, what kind of message am I sending? That basketball is more important than family?" There was a pause. "Thank you for understanding. I'll be at the gym at 6 to prepare for the game." "Yes, I know I might be tired. It's worth it." Riley went upstairs quietly, her heart beating fast. Her father was risking criticism, possibly even fines, to be present at her tryouts. Naturally, this leads us to understand that true love isn't just feeling. It's conscious choices, made repeatedly. Wednesday passed like a blur of nervousness and preparation. Riley could barely concentrate in classes, her mind constantly returning to the next day. During lunch, Andrea sat with her. "Are you ready?" Andrea asked. "I don't know if anyone is really ready for things like this," Riley replied, "but I'm willing, and I think that's what matters." "Is your dad going to be there?" Riley nodded, still emotional from the memory of the phone conversation she had overheard. "How lucky you are," Andrea said. "My dad missed my piano recital last month because of a work meeting." "It wasn't always like this," Riley admitted. "I think this week he understood something I was also trying to understand." "What?" "That sometimes we show love not just by being present in the good moments, but by choosing to be present in the moments that matter most. It's impossible not to feel how 12-year-old children can carry wisdom that many adults take decades to develop." On Thursday morning, Riley woke up at 5:30, 2 hours before her alarm. Her stomach was in knots, but it was a different anxiety from what she felt the previous week. This was anticipation anxiety, not fear. She went downstairs and found Steph in the kitchen, already awake, making coffee. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked with a smile. "I'm nervous, but it's a good nervous," Riley said. "Is this what you felt before important games?" "Exactly that. Nervous because it matters, but confident because you prepared." They had coffee together in comfortable silence, both lost in thoughts. At 7, Steph took her to school as always, but before she got out of the car, he held her hand. "Riley, no matter what happens today, I want you to know something." "What?" "You've already made me proud 1,000 times. What you did this week, deciding to try again, facing your fears, working hard, that's more impressive to me than any shot I've ever made in my life." Riley felt her eyes water. "Dad, I love you, baby girl. Now go show them what a Curry is capable of." Something that touches deeply is when we realize that true pride doesn't come from results, but from the courage to try. The school day seemed to last forever. Riley barely touched lunch, and during the afternoon math class, she had to step out to drink water because she felt dizzy from nervousness. At 2:45, she was in the girls' locker room. changing clothes. 5 other girls were there too. 2 spots, 6 candidates. The odds were bad, but Riley remembered her father's words. She wasn't competing against them. She was competing against her own version that wanted to give up. When she came out to the gymnasium at 2:55, she stopped abruptly. There was Steph, not in the bleachers, but talking calmly with Coach Isaiah Davis on the sideline of the court. He had kept his promise. But that wasn't just what shocked Riley. Sitting in the bleachers were Isha, Ryan, Cannon, and even Dell and Sonia Curry. Her grandparents had flown from Charlotte. The whole family was there. Gabriel Harris, who was also watching from the bleachers with some friends, was visibly disturbed to see the entire Curry family present. "I think she's really going to try," he murmured to a friend. "And I think she might make it," another student replied. Riley approached her father, who was finishing his conversation with Coach Davis. "Dad, what are you doing here? You should be preparing for the game." Steph smiled. "Baby girl, this is my most important game today." Coach Davis approached. "Riley, I'm impressed. Your father told me you trained every day this week." "Yes, sir." "Well, let's see if hard work pays off. You have 1 hour to show what you're capable of." Riley looked at the bleachers, where her family waved. She took a deep breath, feeling a strange calm settle over her. "Dad," she said, turning to Steph one last time before the tests began, "thank you for being here." "Don't thank me yet," Steph said with a mysterious smile. "The best is yet to come." Riley frowned, confused by the comment, but before she could ask what he meant, Coach Davis blew his whistle. "Ladies, let's begin." And as Riley ran to the court, she had no idea that Steph was about to do something that would change not just the outcome of the tryouts, but also her perspective on what it really means to have unconditional support. Some surprises are too big to be anticipated, but small enough to fit perfectly in a 12-year-old heart, ready to be transformed. The first part of the tryouts had been a whirlwind of emotions. Riley ran agility drills, did defensive exercises, and participated in scrimmages for 45 minutes. Her performance was solid, not perfect, but consistent and determined. During the water break, at 3:45 in the afternoon, she looked at the bleachers where her family cheered silently. Steph waved and showed his watch, pointing that he would need to leave soon to prepare for the game. But then something unexpected happened. Coach Isaiah Davis gathered all the girls in the center of the court. "Ladies, before the last 15 minutes of evaluation, we have a special situation." Riley frowned, confused. "Steph Curry asked to speak with you all," the coach continued. "As a father of one of you, but also as someone who understands what it means to fight for your dreams. You can see that some moments are about to become landmarks in the timeline of our lives." Steph came down from the bleachers and walked to the center of the court. He was no longer wearing casual clothes. He was wearing the complete Golden State Warriors uniform. "Girls," Steph began, his voice echoing in the silent gymnasium, "I should be at the training complex right now, preparing for an important game. But I'm here because I believe this gymnasium, this moment, is where true greatness is being defined today." The 6 girls listened in complete silence, including Riley, who had no idea where this was going. "Each of you is here because you had the courage to try. But one of you," Steph looked directly at Riley, "had the courage to try again after failing. And that, young athletes, is what separates the good from the extraordinary." Riley felt her heart race. What was her father doing? "Tonight, when I step onto the court at Chase Center, I'm going to dedicate my game to you 6. Because you reminded me that basketball isn't about fame or recognition. It's about having the courage to get up every time we fall. How is it possible that a man can transform a school gymnasium into a cathedral of inspiration with just words? Steph then did something no one expected. He picked up a basketball and offered it to Riley. "Riley Elizabeth Curry," he said formally, as if he were in an official ceremony, "do you want to show your colleagues the shot we practiced this week?" Riley turned red. "Dad, here, in front of everyone. Baby girl, you're no longer hiding from who you are. Show them what a Curry is capable of when she decides not to give up." Riley took the ball with trembling hands. She walked to the three-point line, exactly where they had practiced in the backyard. The gymnasium was in complete silence. The other candidates, the coach, the family in the bleachers, even Gabriel Harris stopped breathing. She dribbled the ball 3 times, took a deep breath, and shot. The ball flew in a perfect arc, spinning in the air as if dancing with destiny. Swish! The gymnasium exploded in applause. But Steph wasn't finished. "Coach Davis," Steph said, turning to the man, "can I make a request?" "Of course, Steph. All these girls deserve to be on the team. I know you only have 2 spots, but—" Steph made a dramatic pause. "What if I sponsored the creation of an additional JV girls team? 6 girls, 2 teams, more. Opportunities for everyone." What's most impressive is how creative solutions can transform competition into collaboration in a matter of seconds. Riley couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her father was literally creating opportunities where none existed, ensuring that none of them would leave that gymnasium without a chance to play. "Steph," Coach Davis said, clearly moved, "that would be extraordinary. But are you sure?" "Coach, my daughter taught me something this week. Some battles aren't about beating others. They're about creating a world where everyone can win." The other 5 girls began to cry. Riley looked around, seeing tears of relief and gratitude on her colleagues' faces. But she still wasn't crying. There was still something more to come. Steph turned to Riley and performed the sacred ritual. He touched her forehead with his. "Riley, you made me want to be a better father. You taught me that success isn't about how many points I score, but about how many people I help not give up on their dreams." "Dad," Riley began, her voice choked. "I'm not finished, baby girl." Steph stepped away and pulled his phone from his pocket. "Guys," he said, clearly talking to someone from the Warriors, "can you turn on the big screen?" Riley was confused. "What big screen?" At that exact moment, outside the gymnasium, cars began honking. Students ran to the windows, shouting excitedly. "Riley!" Andrea shouted from the bleachers, pointing outside. "Look out! There!" Riley ran to the window and was breathless. Outside the school, a giant Golden State Warriors screen was being installed in the parking lot. Hundreds of people from the community were gathering, including other parents, students, and neighbors. "What's happening?" Riley asked, turning to her father. "Baby girl, tonight, when I play against Denver, every point I score will be dedicated to you. And every person out there, our entire community, will watch the game together, cheering not just for me, but for you." Steph paused, letting the enormity of the gesture settle. "Because you taught me that individual victories don't mean anything if they don't inspire other people to also fight for their dreams." And it was at that moment that Riley finally understood the extent of what her father had done. Isn't it incredible how true love finds ways to multiply instead of just being shared? The tears started slowly, just 2 running down Riley's cheeks. Then came more. They weren't tears of sadness or frustration, but of complete and overwhelming gratitude. "Dad," she sobbed, "you did all this. For me?" "No, Riley. I did this for us, for our family, for your community, for every child who needs to know that no matter how many times you fall, there's always someone cheering for you to get up." Riley threw herself into her father's arms, crying openly now. "I love you so much, Dad. I didn't know. I didn't know you cared so much." "Baby girl," Steph said, also crying now, "there's nothing in this world more important to me than you and your siblings feeling loved and supported. Nothing." The entire gymnasium was crying now. The other girls, their families, even Coach Davis was discreetly wiping his eyes. Have you ever wondered how a father can break and rebuild his daughter's heart in the same moment? Isha came down from the bleachers with Ryan and Cannon, joining the family embrace in the center of the court. Dell and Sonia Curry also approached, forming a circle of love around Riley. "Grandpa," Riley said through tears, looking at Dell, "the real game really is played off the courts, isn't it?" Dell smiled, his own eyes watery. "I always knew you'd understand, granddaughter. I always knew." Steph stepped away for a moment and looked at Riley. "Baby girl, are you ready to go to Chase Center tonight? Because I want you to do the opening tip-off with me." Riley stopped crying for a second, incredulous. "Seriously?" "Seriously. You'll be on the court, with me before the game, in front of 18,000 people. And I'm going to introduce you as my inspiration for tonight." More tears. Riley couldn't stop crying, but now they were tears of such pure joy that she didn't even know this kind of emotion existed. It's impossible not to feel how moments like this completely redefine our understanding of what's possible in family love. Outside, the crowd had grown to more than 300 people. The news was spreading on social media. Steph Curry had transformed a school tryout into a community event of support and inspiration. Coach Davis approached Steph. "You know this is going to be on all the newscasts tonight, right?" "I hope so," Steph replied. "I hope every child watching sees that having a present father isn't about money or fame. It's about choosing your children repeatedly in all the moments that matter." Gabriel Harris, who had watched everything from the bleachers, came down and approached Riley hesitantly. "Riley," he said quietly, I wanted to apologize for what I said. You really are good at basketball. And your dad, well, I wish my dad would do something like this for me." Riley, still with tears in her eyes, surprised everyone by extending her hand to Gabriel. "Gabriel, everyone deserves a father who believes in them. If you want, I can ask my dad to talk to yours. Maybe they can learn from each other." Something that touches deeply is when we see 12-year-old children demonstrating more emotional maturity than many adults achieve in decades. At 5 in the afternoon, Steph finally needed to leave to prepare for the game. It was the final stretch of the regular season. Only 3 games remained before the playoffs began. But first, he gathered all 6 girls one last time. "Ladies, each of you will play basketball here at school. Each of you has an opportunity now. But more important than that," Steph looked at each of them, "each of you learned that giving up is never the only option. There's always a second chance, a third chance, as many chances as you're willing to fight for." He turned specifically to Riley. "And you, my brave daughter, taught me that being a father isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about choosing you, repeatedly, in all the moments that define who you become." "Dad," Riley said, her voice still trembling with emotion, "promise that tonight, when you step onto the court, you'll remember that no matter how many points you make, you're already my hero?" Steph knelt in front of her, tears flowing freely now. Baby girl, you just gave me the most powerful motivation I've ever had for any game. That night, at Chase Center, something happened that no one in the NBA had seen before. During the player introductions, Steph Curry asked for the microphone. Tonight, he said to the 18,000 fans present and millions watching on TV, I want to dedicate this game to my daughter Riley, who taught me that courage isn't never being afraid. Courage is choosing to try again when everyone says you should give up. The crowd exploded in applause. In the VIP bleachers, Riley was sitting with her family, crying with pride. And to every child watching, Steph continued, remember, some battles are worth fighting, especially when you fight for your own dreams. Steph played the best game of the season that night. 42 points, 11 assists, 8 rebounds. But with every basket he made, he looked at the bleachers and pointed to Riley. And Riley? She cried with emotion throughout the entire game, not because her father was playing well, but because she finally understood she was unconditionally loved. Naturally, this leads us to understand that true love not only changes who we are, but inspires who we can become. A week later, Riley was again on the backyard court, but this time she wasn't alone. Gabriel Harris was there, along with Andrea and 2 other girls from school. Steph had kept his promise. He had created not just an additional team, but an entire community youth league. Riley, Gabriel said while waiting for his turn to shoot, thank you for having your dad talk to my dad. They had lunch together yesterday. How did it go? Riley asked. My dad cried. He said he never thought about attending my practices because he thought I wasn't good enough for it to be worth it. Gabriel paused. Your dad told him that value isn't in how good we are, but in how much we care. Riley smiled. My dad is always right about these things. Riley, Andrea asked, are you still afraid sometimes? Of course, but now I know that being afraid doesn't mean I have to stop. It means I have to choose to continue. What's most impressive is how a child can articulate truths that take decades for adults to understand. That afternoon, Steph arrived home from practice and found Riley in the backyard with her friends. Instead of just waving from the window as he did before, he went out and joined them. Can I play? He asked. Of course, Dad, but don't go easy on us. Wouldn't dream of it, Steph laughed. They played for an hour, not as superstar and fans, but as a group of children and an adult who chose to remember the pure joy of the game. When Riley's friends went home, she and Steph were alone on the court, like that first night when everything began. Dad, Riley said, bouncing the ball softly, thank you for teaching me that some battles are worth fighting. And thank you for teaching me, Steph replied, that being a father is the only battle that really matters to win. They stayed there for a few more minutes, father and daughter, sharing the comfortable silence of those who know they're exactly where they should be. You can see that life's greatest moments don't need words, just presence, love, and the understanding that family is the only trophy truly worth pursuing. Months later, when people asked Riley about the moment her father made her cry, with emotion, she would smile and say, it wasn't when he dedicated the game to me, it was when he showed me I had always been his priority. I was just too afraid to notice. When people asked Steph about his greatest achievement, he would point to Riley and say, raising a daughter who knows she's unconditionally loved. That's worth more than all championships. And when people asked Del Curry what made him proudest in the family, he would smile and answer, seeing my son teach my granddaughter that the real game is played off the courts, but that sometimes the biggest victories happen when we choose to play together. Because in the end, what really matters isn't the points scored, the trophies won, or the records broken. What matters is that a 12-year-old girl learned that being Steph Curry's daughter wasn't a burden to carry, but a beautiful responsibility to honor. And that a father learned that his greatest superpower wasn't in his hands, but in his presence. And Riley Curry? She became team captain at school the following year, not because she was a legend's daughter, but because she knew how to lead people who needed to believe they could also get up after falling. The backyard court is still there, a daily reminder that great things happen when you choose not to give up. And every time Riley looks at it, she doesn't just see a place to play basketball. She sees the place where she learned that love is a choice made every day, that courage is trying, even when you're afraid, and that some battles, the battles for our dreams, for our family, for who we want to become, are always worth fighting. And that lesson continues, passing from father to daughter, from heart to heart, like a ball being passed between hands that know the real game is never about beating others. It's about becoming the best version of yourself, surrounded by people who choose to be present in the moments that matter most.